Hyde's eyes flew open, and he shot upright at his desk, his fingers clawing into the composite wood. 30-something classmates turned in their seats to look at him, and Fo, a boy with large front teeth and a little fat body, mocked him for falling asleep again and screaming like a little girl. The teacher ignored the disruption. Hyde wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, ignored the jeers, packed his bag, slung it over his shoulder, and walked out of the classroom. Near the school gates in Area 17, Kai and Risa waited for Hyde. Kai, a tall and confident mage class awakened with a 3-star talent, told Hyde that the instructors were running them hard at training, but he would be back. Hyde nodded despite feeling the vast gulf between them. Kai clapped Hyde on the shoulder and jogged off down the street. Risa lingered, then wished Hyde good luck quietly before following Kai. Hyde walked toward the towering, gray concrete building of the Awakening Assessment Authority Public Division. He exhaled a shaky breath and entered the building. The automatic glass doors slid open, and the warmth of climate-controlled air washed over him. A floor-mounted scanner pulsed blue, scanned him, beeped, and printed a ticket. A receptionist in a fitted white suit smiled professionally, saw his ticket, and directed him down a long corridor. She stopped at a door near the end, held it open, and Hyde stepped inside. The room held a massive circular medical bed beneath a multi-jointed array of mechanical sensors. A bored doctor in a white coat tapped on a tablet while a nurse stood near. The doctor instructed Hyde to lie back and swallow a life stone. The nurse brought a tray with a deep red, crystalline stone the size of half a finger. Hyde picked it up, turned it between his fingers, swallowed it after biting down, and lay down on the bed. The scanner descended, rotating slowly around Hyde's body. For 3 minutes, the machinery remained indifferent. Hyde pressed his left hand against the raised scar tissue on his abdomen, recalling the nightmare and his vow to kill every Calamity Beast. Suddenly, the nurse called out that the reading spiked. The holographic screens flooded with data, and the doctor stood, shocked, announcing that the mana was moving and spiking massively. Hyde felt a thrumming, electric heat surge through his cells, then it stopped. The doctor congratulated him and showed him the official registry data on a digital tablet. Hyde sat up and read, name, Hyde Voltier, age, 18, class, infinity, class potential, S, talent, none, talent potential, none. He stared at the screen, confused by the paradox of having the highest potential but no talent. Before he could process it fully, a translucent blue screen appeared in the center of his vision, glowing unnaturally. It displayed synchronizing system stats, followed by congratulations, Universal Adaptation System is now live. The lady in white repeated that Mr. Voltier had a unique class with S-rank potential and expressed happiness for him. The doctor remarked that an S-rank potential was very rare, occurring in only 1 in a million, and added that he could reach the level of a captain. Hyde asked what kind of problem it was. The doctor explained that he hadn't awakened any talent, noting that unique classes were, as their names suggested, unique and thus unpredictable. The doctor then instructed the lady to register Hyde and give him the status ring before leaving. The lady told Hyde to wait at the reception and followed the doctor out. Hyde dressed silently and stepped out into the corridor. He reached the lobby and walked toward the reception. The receptionist called his name and held a small black box containing the status ring. She instructed him to open it and put it on the middle finger of his left hand. Hyde opened the box, picked up the ring, and slid it onto his finger. The woman asked him to say class state out loud. Hyde complied, and a small semi-transparent status window projected above the ring, visible to anyone. Simultaneously, another translucent blue screen appeared only to Hyde, floating in front of his eyes inside his head with more lines than the official display. Hyde opened the box, picked up the ring, and slid it onto his finger. The woman asked him to say class state out loud. He complied, and a small semi-transparent status window projected above the ring, visible to anyone. Simultaneously, another translucent blue screen appeared only to Hyde, floating in front of his eyes inside his head with more lines than the official display. The two screens showed his stats, one projected from the ring and the other in his mind. The ring's display listed his name as Hyde Voltier, class as Infinity, current class rank as F, class evolution percentage at 0, class potential as S, talent as none, and talent rank 0 stars. The mental screen detailed the Universal Adaptation System with his name, age 18, level. 2 unread notifications appeared in the system messages. The receptionist cleared her throat and addressed him as Mr. Voltier. She confirmed his registration was complete and explained his current situation. She showed him his official data, noting his unique class marked by an infinity sign with S-rank potential, which was rare and highly valued by exterminators. However, she informed him he had not awakened any talent. She explained that the class indicated how his body handled mana, but talents were needed to manifest active combat abilities like fire, gravity, healing, or metal control. Without a talent, his class could not generate combat skills. She clarified that without a talent and with an F-rank class, he would not be cleared for frontline combat because his body would break before Calamity Beasts. Without a talent, his class would not not evolve and remain locked at F rank. She suggested he might find work in support divisions such as logistics, monitoring, or barrier maintenance. His potential meant that if a talent manifested later, he could rise quickly. She advised against joining an extermination agency as a combatant at that moment, calling it suicide. Hyde listened quietly, then thanked her for the explanation. She congratulated him on his awakening, noting that most people never experienced it. He nodded, turned, and walked toward the exit. The doors dissolved open for him, and he stepped into the humid air and the hum of traffic outside the AAA building in Area 17. His mind focused on the two unread notifications glowing softly at the bottom of the blue screen only he could see. He walked along the sidewalk, said class state in his mind, and opened only the Universal Adaptation System. He thought open system messages, which opened a new blue screen with 2 lines of text: Universal Adaptation System initialization complete and welcome class Kickstarter pack. Hyde hesitated, then clicked on the first message with his finger. A message box opened in front of him containing text that would change his life forever. Hyde clicked on the first message, opening a new window resembling a mail inbox. The system informed him that the Universal Adaptation System initialization was complete, and because of his late awakening and lack of talent, he had been selected as a compatible carrier and granted 1 passive skill. Without hesitation, he accepted the passive skill. A new golden window appeared, displaying the acquired passive skill, Adaptive Override. It allowed the host to adapt to any form of damage by analyzing and countering threats, with counter skills evolving upon exposure and stacking permanently. Hyde remained still as a woman with a delivery pack walked through his line of sight without interrupting the display. He read the skill description repeatedly, understanding that every attack would make him stronger by enabling him to counter each damage type after surviving it. The system then prompted him to designate an activation command for Adaptive Override. Hyde considered various options and chose the word Evolve, which was registered by the system. The chill running down his spine signaled the readiness of the skill. He then opened the second system message, the class Kickstarter pack, which detailed unlocked features such as enhanced stat tracking and daily quests, along with. After closing the messages, Hyde noticed the system interface had updated with a 0 notification count and new tabs, including daily quests. Standing on the pavement of Area 17, he contemplated the significance of the system as a gateway to his evolution, despite lacking a talent. Kai approached on the street wearing field gear and carrying a training pack. He noticed the black status ring on Hyde's left hand and expressed genuine surprise and excitement, congratulating Hyde on achieving a unique class with S-rank potential. Kai confirmed the party that evening was on him, giving Hyde 1 hour to prepare and stating he would pick up Risa on the way. Hyde agreed without argument. After Kai departed, a blue light pulsed at the lower edge of Hyde's vision, displaying a system notification about minor blunt force detected on his left shoulder from Kai's palm strikes. The system queried whether to initiate adaptation for this damage type. Hyde observed the negligible impact and then spoke the activation command, Evolve. As soon as Hyde said the activation command, the screen shrank and displayed an adapting progress bar starting at 0% and slowly increasing as he made his way home. He walked through the city to the building where his apartment was located and took the elevator to the 4th floor. The system notification arrived before he had taken off his jacket. He stood in the narrow corridor of Unit 4M in the eastern residential block of Area 17, a government-issued apartment for orphan minors. He stopped and examined the screen in disbelief as it showed the adaptation was complete, generating a counterskill called Dermal Reinforcement at rank F, which increased skin density and nerve threshold slightly, improving resistance to minor impacts and abrasions. Hyde realized he had acquired a skill from Kai's palm strikes despite its low rank and wondered if it was equivalent to the talents normal exterminators possessed. He closed the screen and entered the small apartment, which consisted of a main living area with a kitchen, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and a narrow balcony overlooking the street below. The furniture was standard issue: a composite table, 2 chairs, a sleeping platform with a mattress he had never replaced, and a shelf holding 3 paper books that belonged to his mother. The compact automated support system, CAS, unit sat in its charging dock in the corner of the main room and greeted him with a warm voice, reporting the current time, exterior temperature, and CAS informed him about the eastern window seal cycling open intermittently due to wind pressure and suggested replacing the gasket soon. It also noted his food unit had been on standby for 12 hours and asked if it should activate the heating cycle. Hyde agreed. Cass observed the status ring on Hyde's finger and congratulated him on his awakening. Hyde thanked it and sat on the edge of the table, remaining still as the food unit hummed and the window seal clicked once against the wind. He pressed his thumb against the scar through his shirt and stared at the opposite wall, recalling his first step toward his goal. When the food unit chimed, Hyde was about to stand and eat when his communicator buzzed with an incoming call from Kai. He ignored it, crossed to the balcony door, and opened it to the night air of Area 17. He looked down at Kai's Kai's dark blue mid-range transit vehicle parked below, with its running lights casting a soft blue strip across the pavement. Kai leaned against the driver's side door with arms crossed, and beside him stood Risa, holding the strap of her bag and looking. Kai gestured toward the car, and Risa waved before looking at her shoes. Hyde smiled, went back inside, and dressed quickly. He stood before the bathroom mirror, the only luxury item he had ever bought for the apartment, in a white shirt and black pants, the simplest appropriate outfit for a birthday dinner. He pushed back his silver hair, which immediately fell forward again, and thought about his inherited features, his hair from his mother and his blue eyes from his father. He tried to smile at his reflection, but the expression faltered. He called out to Cass, asking it to turn off the food unit and noting he would return late. When asked about the lock setting, he chose standard and instructed Cass to order the window gasket replacement using the maintenance fund. Cass confirmed the order and wished him a good evening. Hyde stepped outside, closing the door behind him but accidentally placing his finger between it. To his surprise, he felt no pain, realizing that unlike a normal human, his finger would have turned purple but now was unaffected. Hyde looked down at his finger wedged in the door frame, pulled it free, and examined it under the corridor light. It appeared perfectly normal. He put on his jacket and went downstairs. Outside the building, Kai had the car window down with one arm resting on the door. He looked up from his comm and noted that Hyde had come down on time, admitting he had bet it would take at least 2 more calls and lost. Kai unlocked the passenger door and told Hyde to get in. Hyde entered the car, which smelled like the pine air freshener Kai had used since Academy days. The navigation display glowed softly. From the back seat came deliberate silence. Hyde glanced in the side mirror and saw Risa sitting behind Kai, hands in her lap, staring at the window as if interested in the. Kai called Risa's name, and she responded without looking at him. When Kai pulled out into the street, Risa stopped looking out the window and instead focused on the back of Hyde's head while her fingers worked at the strap of a bag beside her. Kai told her to just give the package to Hyde. Risa protested but then reluctantly produced a brown paper package tied with white ribbon, which hovered over the center console in Hyde's peripheral vision. He took it without ceremony. Hyde found the ribbon, pulled it loose, and unfolded the paper to reveal thick, golden chocolate cookies. He took one and ate it, then another, commenting that they were very good. From the back seat came a voice trying to sound normal but failing. Risa spoke quickly, explaining she had baked the cookies for Hyde's birthday and was unsure about the timing due to her. Kai kept his eyes on the road. Risa cleared her throat and congratulated Hyde on his awakening, expressing that she and Kai were glad it had happened and asking him to be careful with his unique class abilities. Hyde promised he would be okay. Risa sighed in relief. Kai reached into the door compartment, held out a matte black card with silver trim, and told Hyde it was a general access permit for Gate Training Facility 7, Area 17, allowing 2-time entry with F-rank clearance and pairing with an observer for the first run, granting full combat access. Hyde read the card twice and thanked both of them. Kai warned him not to get sentimental, and Hyde told him to drive straight ahead. Kai smiled openly, and Risa laughed from the back seat. The navigation display announced a left turn in 300 meters. Hyde turned the access card over in his hands, about to pocket it, when suddenly chaos erupted. The car was hit violently from the left, leaving the road and flipping over onto its roof against a residential block facade. Steam rose from the drive units, and the windshield fractured around a central impact point. Blood pooled under the car. Hyde twisted out of his seatbelt, dropped to his knees on broken glass, and crawled out onto the pavement, coughing. He called for Kai and Risa, then pressed both hands against the inverted car's undercarriage and pushed with all his strength, but the car did not move. He released and searched for his communicator, finding it face up with a cracked screen cycling an emergency alert. The alert warned of a mana conjuncture detected in Sector 17S, Grid 4 through 9, with a high probability of gate formation, instructing all civilians to evacuate immediately and warning not to approach mana concentration zones. Emergency response units were dispatched with an unknown ETA. Sirens began, signaling a serious danger. Hyde looked up to see the air at the intersection ahead folding inward at a single point above the road, like fabric pulling toward a tear. He counted 11 seconds until the gate opened with a sound resembling a large volume of water being displaced. The air folded inward and did not return, revealing a hole in the expected world through which something not of Earth's sky was barely visible. A vibration came up through the pavement and into Hyde's bones, accompanied by snarling sounds unlike any training simulation. Hyde swallowed hard and fixed his eyes on the gate. Behind the inverted car, metal groaned and blood continued to pool. Kai and Risa remained inside. The emergency response ETA was unknown, sirens blared, and the gate hovered as a perfect arc circle above the intersection. Hyde set his jaw and took a step toward the gate, then another. Beneath his cold rage and grief, something new surfaced within him, a nameless force that felt like the first step of a destiny he was born to fulfill. The snarling grew louder. Hyde's mouth curved slightly. He was no longer weak but awakened. The first first Calamity Beast pushed through the gate, warping the black circle at the intersection as it clawed its way into the... It stood about 2 meters at the shoulder, its long, low body a mix between a cat and a reptile, with lean muscle wrapped in jagged, glassy plates pulsing faintly with violet light. Its head bore too many narrow red eyes arranged in a fan, and its mouth revealed rows of blade-like teeth. The second and third beasts followed, spilling out one after another like a pack of wolves. Their claws hit the road, spiking the mana in the air sharply, causing pressure behind Hyde's eyes. Hyde's heart hammered twice as he recognized them as Calamity Beasts he had dreamed of killing. His hands curled into fists, nails digging into his palms. One beast lifted its head, fixing 6 red eyes on him. Time narrowed between them as Hyde stood in the street, a car overturned behind him with blood pooling under crumpled metal. The beast crouched at the far end of the road, its breath shimmering in the mana-heavy air. It snarled once and charged. Instead of retreating, Hyde stepped forward, his lips peeling back in a wide, sharp expression. He whispered that they were finally here. Heat surged through his limbs, his perception sharpened, and the world slowed slightly. The beast's charge resolved into frames, flexing claws, rolling shoulders, jaw opening wider to bite. Hyde ran straight at it. The beast's first swipe came low, claws glowing violet and nearly severing his legs. Hyde jumped, mistiming by a fraction, and felt a claw glance off his shin. He tumbled, landing in a 3-point stance as blood flowed from the wound, intentionally activating his passive skill. The system screen appeared, analyzing the injury and awaiting his command. Hyde smiled and commanded, "Evolve." The adaptation began as the beast charged again, swinging higher with glowing foreleg plates. The claws shimmered violet in the air. Hyde threw himself sideways but caught a proper claw strike on his forearm, feeling searing pain as if flesh was peeled and cauterized simultaneously. He hit the ground, vision flashing white and tasting blood. The beast's shadow loomed as it prepared the next strike. The system progress reached 60%. The beast lunged. Hyde did not roll away but waited. The claws came down. Hyde raised his legs, knowing the impact would break bones, and kicked the beast in the crotch. His legs went numb, and he screamed once, biting down to cut off the sound. The beast swayed, snarling in pain. At 80%, the beast steadied and snarled with animal satisfaction at prey that did not flee or break easily. Hyde laughed, a harsh, insane sound from deep within, recalling the memory of a beast's hand through his stomach and his mother's body on the floor. He pushed himself up on shaking legs and stood between the beast and the overturned vehicle. His hoarse voice challenged the beast to try harder. At 100%, the adaptation completed. The system generated the counterskill Abyssal Scale Carapace, manifesting dark steel scales across Hyde's body that drastically increased his physical defense and resistance to cutting damage, absorbing and suppressing 50% of physical harm. The beast responded to Hyde's challenge by lunging with its jaws, aiming to bite him in half. The beast opened its maw wide, revealing rows of blade-like teeth deep in its throat. The plates along its neck flared with light as it lunged with full weight. Hyde stepped forward despite the pain in his legs and the blood sliding down into his shoe from his forearm wound. The beast's jaws came down, but at the moment they should have closed around his chest. Something beneath Hyde's skin shifted. Dark steel scales erupted through his flesh, forming overlapping plates that wrapped his chest, shoulders, arms, and forearms, swallowing his wounds. The beast bit down and met metal instead of flesh. The impact rang through Hyde's bones with a clang, sparks jumping from the contact point. His heels scraped the road, but his flesh did not tear. The beast froze, its 6 eyes widening slightly. Hyde gripped the upper and lower halves of the beast's jaw with his scaled hands as the armor on his forearms thickened and ridges sharpened along his knuckles. He pulled the jaws apart as the beast thrashed, claws gouging the asphalt and saliva splattering his scales. One jaw joint popped, then the second snapped, and the lower section of the beast's mouth tore free, tendons. Hyde staggered forward with the sudden lack of resistance and flung the bloody jaw aside. The beast's body collapsed in a heap, violet blood pouring from its ruined face and splashing over the road. Hyde gained 50 experience points. He looked down at his hands, now black gauntlets with ridged, blunt claws. The scales had spread to his neck, cheeks, and temples, leaving only slits for his eyes. Plates began converging on his forehead, pushing upward into a pointed shape. The gate hummed behind the circle of beasts. The remaining 11 wolves snarled and paced in a crescent between the gate and an overturned car. Hyde stood alone in the middle, blood sliding down his calf from a slash. His shirt hung in strips over his armored chest. He whispered a command for the next attack. The nearest wolf lowered its head, leaped with claws outstretched, and aimed for his throat. Hyde met it with his right arm, striking its jaw with the back of his scaled hand. The impact sounded like stone shattering. The creature's head snapped sideways, and it crashed into the ground, sliding before coming to a stop. Its limbs twitched briefly before the plates along its spine went dark. Hyde gained another 50 experience points as the pack howled and swarmed him. The remaining 11 Calamity Beasts leaped together, claws tearing the air and howls merging into a single, ragged sound. Hyde charged into them. He met the first beast with his shoulder, the impact shaking his armor but barely felt. The beast bounced off, claws skittering across the black plates on his chest. 3 more attacked him, one snapping for his calves from below, another aiming claws at the gap between his scales and eye, and a third circling for his back. Hyde's right leg shot out, striking the beast from below in the throat, crushing it. His left forearm blocked the high claws, letting them rake along metal instead of skin. The third beast bit into his side, but the plates flexed and locked, stopping the teeth. Hyde gripped the back of the biting beast's neck, squeezing until something snapped and the creature went limp. He pried its jaw loose and dropped the carcass. Beasts attacked again from left, right, and front, claws clanging against his scales and teeth tearing a shallow line on his forearm. The scales surged to cover the wound. Hyde's fists drove into a beast's skull twice, breaking it before the creature could fall. Another beast raked his back with claws, throwing him forward. Hyde seized the beast's foreleg with both hands and twisted, tearing the limb free. He stomped on its neck repeatedly until it stopped moving. The black scales climbed, fully covering his neck and head, forming 8 jagged spikes like a crown. Hyde struck beast skulls, ripped out brain matter, and slammed creatures onto the pavement, breaking their ribs. One beast tried to run, but Hyde tackled it from the side, wrapping his arms around its midsection. They tumbled, and Hyde rolled to straddle its back, pulling until the beast's spine cracked and vertebrae separated. The creature went limp. By the time the last beast charged, only broken jaws, severed limbs, and a destroyed ribcage remained. Hyde's scales were chipped and cracked, violet blood dried across his armor. He breathed hard as system notifications appeared in his vision, showing experience gained, level up, and warnings about host fatigue. Behind him, an overturned car lay crushed against a building, with glass scattered around. Hyde muttered that he needed to get the occupants out. Emergency vehicles arrived, and figures in combat gear deployed, rifles locking onto targets. A woman reported the gate confirmed with multiple F-class beasts down, but stopped when she saw Hyde's silhouette, crowned with jagged metal and surrounded by dead beasts. She informed command of an unknown entity, suspected humanoid Calamity Beast, protecting a crashed civilian vehicle. Hyde lifted his head, blue eyes flashing between the plates, showing only the afterimage of slaughter. The system warned that host fatigue limit had been reached and forced deactivation of the Abyssal Scale Carapace. The steel plates broke starting at his fingers, revealing raw, pale flesh. His helm cracked and fell away, leaving him exposed. The crown dissolved last. Cold air hit his face as his clothes were torn apart. His knees gave out from the sudden rush of pain and sensation. His vision swam. To the incoming team, it looked like the armored beast was shedding its skin, collapsing inward to reveal a boy drenched in violet and red, white hair plastered to his forehead, blue eyes unfocused. The woman with the comm stepped back and reported to command that the unknown entity was. Before she finished, the gate behind them convulsed and tore open, spilling out a second wave of monsters. The gate's edges rippled and distorted as a low hum deepened into a growl. Every rifle snapped toward it. The leader ordered the barrier up. Hyde fell unconscious before seeing anything else. Hyde woke on a flat white ceiling above him. He moved his fingers, curling them into the hospital sheet covering his bare skin. He pushed himself upright and called out if anyone was there, but silence answered. He turned his head, feeling neck pain but no other injury, and saw a blank wall on his left and a seamless door without a handle on his right. He noticed a healed scar on his left forearm and called out for Kai and Risa, receiving no reply. A soft chime appeared at the top of his vision as the system displayed a post-combat analysis. The system queried whether to initiate an adaptation sequence, which Hyde accepted. The adaptation progress showed percentages increasing from 0% to 6%. He tried to move his legs but felt no response below mid-thigh. He peeled back the blanket and saw 2 narrow matte black metal rings with faint blue symbols circling his ankles. He wiggled his toes and legs with no effect. He let the blanket fall back and sank into the pillow, breathing rapidly. He told himself Kai and Risa were fine, reasoning that someone must have rescued them. Hyde called out again, asking if anyone was out there and where his friends were, but received no answer. He noticed 4 small circular recesses in the upper corners of the room, which were cameras observing him. He accessed the system window to check his class state. The system displayed his details. Host Hyde Voltier, age 18, level 2, experience 100/700, class Infinity, class rank F, evolve level 120th. Physical attributes included strength 6, agility 5, endurance 10, vitality 8. Mental attributes included perception 7, willpower 12, and 5 non-allocated points. Active skill was Abyssal Scale Carapace, A. Passive skill Dermal Reinforcement, F. Inventory and daily quests were also visible with no unread notifications. Hyde noted the new non-allocated points and the inventory and daily quest options. potions. He questioned why he had no mana attribute, and the system clarified that skills did not use mana as a base. He opened the inventory, finding 20 slots with a beginner's sword and a potion doubling physical attributes for 10 minutes. He checked the daily quests: push-ups 0 out of 100, straight punches 0 out of 100, kicks 0 100ths, static lift 0/100 kg total, run 0/10 km, each rewarding 100 experience points. Completing all 5 granted 1 free attribute point and a recovery potion. Failure to complete would result in a penalty. Currently hold level 2 starting in 57 seconds. Hyde reacted with surprise to the penalty countdown. The daily quest window displayed a penalty countdown labeled hold 2, starting in 57 seconds. The numbers blinked down from 57, but the system window offered no explanation. Hyde tried tapping and swiping the timer, but it remained unchanged. He glared at the blue pane and demanded an explanation. Another window appeared, showing an adaptive override completion and a new counterskill called Predator's Respite, which restored stamina on enemy kills and chain kills. Hyde scanned the skill description and noted that restoring 50% of missing stamina per kill would have helped him. The countdown continued without pause. He returned his focus to the daily quest panel, which pulsed once. He whispered his frustration about being unable to move his legs and questioned how he could complete the quests. The timer kept ticking down. He closed the daily quest window, reopened his main status, and widened the panel. He saw 5 non-allocated points and considered where to assign them. He recalled the car he had tried to move and decided to allocate 4 points to strength, increasing it from 6 to 10 and reducing points to 1. He felt a warmth spreading through his body. Then he assigned the last point to endurance, raising it from 10 to 11. The penalty timer continued counting down. Hyde whispered his disbelief that the penalty would still activate. He focused on the bottom of the daily quest window, which warned that failure to complete daily quests would result in a penalty. The countdown reached 17 seconds. Hyde wondered what would happen when it hit 0, questioning if he would lose stats, experience, or suffer some other punishment. He heard footsteps approaching outside the door and cursed the timing. The timer dropped to 8 seconds, then 7. After 3 seconds remained, a new line appeared indicating transfer preparation. Hyde demanded to know where the transfer would send him and protested as the countdown reached 1. He swung his fist at the panel, but his hand passed through it. When the timer hit 0, he found himself standing upright in a vast, dark, reflective space. Geometric planes and lines of light floated at impossible distances around him, creating a 4-dimensional machine-like environment. Hyde compared it to a cyber game lobby. A window appeared labeled penalty space, detailing 2 penalty holds, each lasting 15 minutes, totaling 30 minutes. It stated that skill and stat enhancements were temporarily suppressed during the penalty. Another line explained that time in this space was compressed by a factor of 1,000, so 30 minutes inside equaled 1.8 seconds outside. Hyde realized that those approaching would not notice his absence. He understood that whatever occurred here would affect only him. He demanded why he was punished for missing the quests while unconscious in a hospital, but the pain ignored him. A final message appeared wishing him good luck surviving. Hyde stood alone in a space without a clear up or down. He turned at the sound behind him and instinctively jumped back. Pixels coalesced out of the air, forming wireframe skeletons that filled with color and depth until a creature the size of a small building stood before him. The beast hunched to fit into the space, its vaguely humanoid form stretching upward with limbs too long and clawed hands. Its smooth, dark gray skin resembled wet stone, and a featureless oval with a vertical slit of red light marked where its head should have been. The giant tilted its head toward Hyde, the red slit flaring as if opening eyes. One of its limbs came down like a hammer. Hyde did not see the movement but felt the impact as bones crumpled and organs. Then he was standing again in the same place in the infinite room. The memory of the crushing pain returned, and he dropped to his knees, vomiting onto a surface that held the liquid suspended. His hands shook as he gasped that he had died. A shadow fell over him, and the giant's hand came down again. Hyde threw himself to the side, tumbling across the surface as the hand slammed where he had been, sending a ripple through the space. He rolled to his feet and punched the giant's knee, but his skills were suppressed and the giant did not react. Pain shot up his arm as his knuckles cracked, and the other hand swatted him aside. He respawned standing in the lobby, the beast already mid-motion. This time he did not vomit but choked as the memory of death slammed into him. The system did not appear or offer help. He checked the time. Only 2 minutes had passed. The giant and its hands remained. On the third attempt, Hyde attacked with more strategy but, seeing no effect, tried to run. His legs pumped, muscles burning, but the dark expanse never changed and the giant's footfalls closed in. He did not see the swing or the moment it touched him. It happened instantly. He respawned again and again. After multiple deaths, his mind grew dizzy and stamina drained. He lost track after the 7th death. Each time, the fear fear changed from panic to dread as he braced for the hand. He tried rolling, feigning death, leaping onto the hand, and climbing the arm, but none worked. With stats locked and no skills or armor, he was helpless. He saw the giant strike in slow motion, raising his hands in vain defense, and thought about what his mother might have felt accepting the inevitable. By an unknown turn, a part of him detached and catalogued the monster's identical attacks. He realized how weak his body was without the system that had helped him kill 12 beasts when the gate opened. Eventually, glowing text appeared between deaths. Penalty session complete. Total penalty time, 30 minutes. Total deaths, 19. Hyde blinked and found himself back in the hospital bed under the same white ceiling, hand half raised toward a now absent screen. Footsteps approached down the corridor. He gasped sharply, clamping his teeth shut. His body felt unreal, the memory of breaking lingering in his muscles and mind. He opened the system window and saw no more penalty holds. The door slid open with a hiss, and two figures stepped inside. Hyde flinched and looked up toward the gate in the hospital room. A woman entered wearing hospital slippers, a white bra, and matching panties. She held a clipboard, her hair tied in a loose bun with strands along her cheeks. She met Hyde's eyes and smiled slowly, amused, and greeted him, saying she was glad to see him awake and had feared the job would be boring otherwise. Before Hyde could respond, the door opened again and another woman stepped in wearing a full black body-tight suit. She had long blonde hair with red tips and piercing red eyes. Hyde recognized her as the leader of the emergency response team. She addressed him as Mr. Voltier, expressing relief that he was conscious. Hyde immediately asked about Kai and Risa, who had been in the car, demanding to know what had happened to them and if they were all right. The nurse stepped close unnoticed, bent over, and pressed a finger gently against Hyde's lips, signaling for silence. She murmured for him to take one thing at a time and then chuckled softly, calling him a good boy before moving to his side. The woman in black observed the exchange with a restrained expression. The leader assured Hyde that his friends were alive and under observation in another wing, and that he would see them after the questioning. She introduced herself as Captain Claire from the Geoford Extermination Agency and the nurse as Annie. Annie waved with her pen and said they had reviewed his file but wanted to know more about him personally. Hyde asked what they wanted to ask. Annie sat on the edge of the bed, clipboard balanced on her knee, and began with a simple question about his awakening 2 days prior, confirming that he was one of the rare cases who awakened on the third try. Hyde nodded. Annie explained that his results showed a unique class with an infinity symbol, an S-rank potential, and no awakened talent. Hyde confirmed this. Annie then asked if anything had happened between then and the gate opening, if he felt different in body or mind. Hyde thought of the system appearing but said no. Claire requested that he walk them through the moment the gate opened and what he felt. Before Hyde could answer, a blue screen dropped into his vision indicating a cognitive anomaly and external suggestion influencing his decision-making, prompting an adaptation sequence. Hyde realized one of the women had a talent affecting minds and that his answers were coming without conscious thought. He paused 2 seconds and carefully answered that he felt angry when the first beast came through, angry about Calamity Beasts for a long time, and that he had awakened hoping to save his friends, so he didn't run. Claire acknowledged this and asked what happened when he decided not to run, if anything changed or if he connected with something. Hyde said it was hard to explain, that it was not a talent but his class reacted when he was in danger. When wounded, he felt strange and overwhelming strength trying to escape, which he allowed, but he did not remember much after. Annie asked about armor. Hyde denied ever wearing armor, explaining that what might have looked like armor was not actually armor. Annie noted this and asked if he felt like himself the whole time or like he was watching someone else. Hyde said it felt like himself, just a version focused solely on killing Calamity Beasts. Annie scribbled notes while Claire folded her arms and closed her eyes briefly before asking if his class communicated with him, gave information, or told him what it was doing. Hyde shook his head, saying he didn't know much and it had only happened once. Claire studied him but did not press further. Claire then asked if since waking up he had felt anything unusual, such as feeling out of place or secretly wanting to kill both of them. Hyde stared at Claire for a moment and repeated the question about killing them. Annie said it was a standard question and told him not to take it personally. Claire explained that when they found him, he was standing in a posture associated with Calamity Lord-controlled hosts and wore a crown, which suggested possible partial possession. Hyde expressed shock and denied any possession, insisting he knew his own thoughts. Claire asked him to be fully honest about whatever happened and what his class could do. Hyde questioned how he could trust them when he was bound to the bed, alone with no explanation and cameras in every corner. Claire assured him he was not under arrest and had saved civilian lives. She explained that his body had been saturated with mana from the gate and showed a partial neural overlay, leading to suspicion of possession by a Calamity Lord, but scans later showed the overlay was gone and his cognitive patterns were clean. Annie said the bans were standard procedure to prevent escape if possession occurred. Hyde asked what happened happen next. Claire said the scans were clean and he would be released soon. Claire asked a few more questions, and Hyde answered without revealing too much. At the door, Claire told him someone would come back for him, and Annie gave him one last look before they left. Hyde sat silently, looking at the system screen displaying a new skill. Adaptive override with a generated counterskill, unshaken will, granting resistance to mind-affecting effects and alerts for external cognitive influence. He spent nearly an hour checking the system and realized skills did not consume mana, unlike talents, effectively giving him infinite mana dependent on his attributes. He did 50 push-ups on the bed, arms shaking, and threw punches at the air until his shoulders burned. The door slid open again, and Claire entered alone carrying a small gray device. She crouched by the bed, used the device to unlock the black bands on his ankles, and dropped them into a case. Hyde flexed his ankles, feeling warmth and the return of weight. Claire handed him a clean white card with a logo and the words Geoford Extermination Agency with a handwritten number on the back. She told him to contact her if he wanted to join properly and that she could recommend him to bypass the waiting list. Hyde thanked her genuinely. Claire nodded and moved toward the gate. Hyde asked for clothes. Claire explained they found him naked and whatever he wore did not survive the manifestation. She said his possessions, including his phone, were on the counter outside and they had sourced clothes for him. Before leaving, Hyde asked about Kai and Risa. Claire said Kai had left the hospital that morning because he was an awakened exterminator who healed faster and had no major issues. Hyde expressed mixed relief and irritation. Claire did not immediately answer about Risa as they walked down the corridor. Hyde followed her and asked again about Risa. At an intersection, Claire stopped and turned to face Hyde without answering his repeated questions. She nodded simply when he asked how Risa was and told him to follow her. Claire led Hyde deeper into the hospital, past the main ward and recovery wing, through multiple security doors requiring her badge and face verification by a guard. The corridor beyond had reinforced walls and glass-fronted cells lining both sides, each sealed and lit with pale white light. Inside each cell, unconscious patients lay surrounded by machines, their skin marked by dark lines resembling cracks. Claire stopped in front of cell 78. Hyde looked at the number, then through the glass to see Risa lying in a hospital bed connected to various machines, her head wrapped in white bandages, and dark veins spreading along the left side of her face. He asked Claire what the veins were. She explained that Risa suffered from mana poisoning due to her body never undergoing awakening, which left her unable to resist or process mana. The wild mana entered through a head injury sustained in the accident and forced itself inside her body. Hyde asked how long it would take to heal her. Claire said there was no cure yet. Humanity had not developed a treatment for full mana poisoning. They could only isolate her from further mana exposure, keep the environment clean, and monitor the progression to buy time. Hyde remained silent, staring at the glass until Claire looked away to give him privacy. He thought about Risa's prestigious family and their neglect after she failed to awaken but pushed the thoughts away and walked out without speaking. Hyde collected his belongings from the counter, including a small sealed plastic bag and his cracked, dead phone, which he pocketed. He changed into hospital-provided clothes in a nearby room and exited the front doors alone. Outside, he started walking but stopped halfway after clenching his jaw and fist until his knuckles turned white. Scales briefly flickered along the back of his hand before retreating. He resolved silently to kill every Calamity Beast that had ever emerged from a gate. At the next intersection, Hyde checked his pockets and found his Exterminator ring and 2 cards. He pulled out the card Kai had given him, a general access permit for Gate Training Facility 7, Area 17. Instead of going home, he asked his system if there was a cure for mana poisoning. The system displayed a rank A consumable called Mana Purification Catalyst that could clear mana contamination with full reversal if administered within 180 days of exposure but required player level 50. Hyde, at level 2, closed the screen and resumed walking. He reached the Gate Training Facility 7 after a 40-minute walk. The buildings were empty except for robots and automatic guns. The dome came into view, a large, stadium-like bunker with thick outer walls, reinforced paneling, blast-rated glass, and safety equipment such as mana dampeners and emergency seal units. 3 monitoring stations were staffed, drones circled the rim, and cameras tracked the entrance. A sign listed access protocols. Hyde looked at the facility, then at the card in his hand. He shook his head, dismissed the weight of the hospital visit, and walked toward the entrance. He had 49 levels to climb and was not going home first. Hyde approached the door, and a robotic hand appeared. The screen instructed him to place his Exterminator ring for verification. He lifted his arm, placed the ring on the screen, which glowed green, and the doors hissed open automatically. Inside, a desk with a woman and 2 guards awaited him. He stepped in and walked to the counter. The woman stood, bowed, and welcomed him to Public Gate Training Facility 7, asking how she could assist. Hyde hesitated, unsure what to say, but the woman checked her monitor and identified him as a recently awakened exterminator named Hyde Voltu. here. She requested his permit or entry card. Hyde retrieved the card Kai had given him and placed it on the desk. The woman took the card, nodded, and entered information into her computer. The two guards in gray uniforms with the number 7 insignia watched him, and he returned their gaze. The woman finished her entries, returned the card with a smile, and noted his general access, 2-entry permit, and lack of affiliation on file. She asked if he was solo, and he confirmed. She radioed for a helper at Gate 1 for an unaffiliated solo entry on a first visit, then bowed and told him to wait by the inner door. A guard led Hyde to the inner door, where he waited 40 seconds until it burst open. A young man with messy brown hair, a Facility 7 helper badge still in plastic, and a clipboard entered while adjusting his lanyard. He caught his foot on a small barrier, stumbled forward, and dropped his clipboard, scattering papers across the entrance hall. The young man smiled awkwardly, apologized, and quickly gathered the papers. He introduced himself as Toma, Hyde's helper for today and tomorrow due to the 2-entry permit. Toma flipped his lanyard and welcomed Hyde to Gate Training Facility 7, asking if it was his first time. Hyde nodded. Toma remarked that most first-timers stood where Hyde was and looked the same way, then invited him. Toma held the inner door open as Hyde entered. Inside the dome, the facility was larger than it appeared outside, divided into 5 zones separated by indestructible glass membranes. Each zone contained a swirling mass of black, purple, green, and red energy-emitting particles. Toma explained that these were condensed mana particles, small now but destined to become lifestones used in the awakening process. As they walked, Toma spoke continuously about the rules. No weapons outside designated zones, no approaching gate glass without clearance, and instructions for alarm tones. Low tone meant stop and find staff, high tone meant evacuate, and continuous tone indicated serious trouble. Hyde acknowledged understanding. Toma explained equipment borrowing from the inner armory required a permit card and security deposit. He noted Hyde had not registered any talent or class ability, which was common among unaffiliated newcomers. Toma refrained from pressing further. Toma then addressed Hyde's probable lack of knowledge about gate structures, rank systems, and Calamity Beast ranks due to his recent awakening and lack of affiliation. Hyde admitted his limited understanding. Toma brightened and led Hyde to a rest area resembling a cafeteria with many people eating and resting. They sat at an empty table, and Toma prepared to explain the basics before proceeding. Toma set his clipboard on the table and leaned forward to explain gates to Hyde, emphasizing their importance to exterminators. He identified 3 common types of gates in their world. First, one-way gates, which open without warning and release Calamity Beasts. These gates cannot be entered from their side, and Toma noted these gates cause urban incidents. Second, loop gates, which never close and have a gatekeeper that regenerates after being killed. These gates are used for training as they allow repeated cycles. He pointed out the 5 glass zones in the facility, each containing a loop gate. Third, dungeon gates, which connect to structured dungeons with their own geography and a dungeon master. To close these gates, one must enter and kill the dungeon master within 24 hours. Otherwise, the gate breaks, causing the dungeon to merge permanently with the surrounding real-world area, a phenomenon called a. Hyde asked if dungeon breaks had occurred. Toma confirmed 2 recorded instances, both involving 5-star gates near coastal cities. The first transformed an area almost as large as a country, and the government responded by detonating coastal infrastructure to isolate the affected zone, which now drifts in the ocean as a living dungeon. Toma explained the consensus that these coastal occurrences were merciful, as inland breaks would have been catastrophic. Toma then described the gate ranking system, ranging from 1-star to 5-star, with each level representing a significant increase in difficulty and danger. 5-star gates require national-level coordination, and while a theoretical 6-star classification exists, none have been recorded. Researchers agree that a 6-star gate opening inland would necessitate redrawing maps. Next, Toma explained Calamity Beast rankings, which are separate from gate ranks and based on mana density and threat capability, spanning 8 levels from G rank, weakest, through F rank, E rank, and D rank. Beyond D rank, beasts receive different titles. C rank are lesser Calamity Lords posing tactical threats capable of wiping out squads. B rank are higher Calamity Lords requiring at least 3 S rank exterminators for engagement. A rank are Supreme Calamity Lords considered national emergencies, with 11 recorded appearances, 7 suppressed, and 4 causing permanent area changes. S rank are Primordial Calamity Lords with only 2 confirmed appearances, 1 theorized to. Toma stressed that no facility or exterminator can fully prepare for S-rank threats and that understanding this hierarchy is crucial for Hyde. As Toma finished and reached for his water, a loud voice interrupted from behind Hyde, announcing the presence of someone familiar. Hyde recognized the voice as his classmate Fu before turning around. Hyde turned around and confirmed his guess. Fu stood 3 tables away, flanked by 2 men and a woman, all dressed casually but equipped. Fu was broader than Hyde remembered and smiled, revealing crooked front teeth. He glared at Hyde and gritted his teeth. Fu stepped closer and remarked that Hyde was actually at a gate training facility, questioning what he was doing there and mocking him for possibly wandering in by accident. Hyde responded calmly that normal citizens were not allowed inside. Fu grew more agitated, mocked Hyde for sleeping and screaming at the gates instead of the classroom, and mimicked a high-pitched plea to stop, prompting laughter from two of his companions and some nearby tables. Toma stood up hesitantly to intervene, but was silenced by a glance from one of Fu's male companions. Hyde placed his hands flat on the table. Fu moved closer, pointed the ring on his finger at Hyde's ring, and noted Hyde's unique class with an infinity symbol, calling it cute but talentless. He mocked Hyde's class and asked if his plan was to kill Calamity Beasts barehanded. Fu's party laughed, and the cafeteria watched with pity, including Toma. Hyde exhaled heavily and said nothing. Fu told Hyde to go home and crawl back to his deceased mother, implying Hyde had nowhere to go. Without warning, Hyde stood and punched Fu in the left side of his face before the grin could form fully. At the moment of impact, scales surfaced across Hyde's knuckles, pressed into Fu's teeth with full force, and vanished instantly. Fu's head snapped sideways. He hit a table and dropped to one knee holding his mouth. The cafeteria fell silent. Fu pulled his hand away, revealing two bloody, crooked teeth in his palm. After 2 seconds, Fu screamed curses and surged forward with his two male companions. Guards moved quickly to contain the fight within 15 seconds. Fu still bled from his mouth, his face pale with fury. A guard ordered both parties to step back. The cafeteria rearranged itself around the incident, with most people standing or pressed against walls, some seated calmly. Near the far wall, a young man in his early 20s with short dark hair sat with a bowl of hot food and a coat folded over his chair. He watched the guards separate the groups, set down his spoon, and told them they should not fight in public spaces, asking if their parents had taught basic courtesy. He explained that fighting like that would lead to flagged records and restricted permits, and that there was a proper way to settle disputes, a gate completion challenge. The girl in Fu's crew asked what that was. The young man explained that the challenge was held in a gate where both parties entered simultaneously, and whoever defeated the gatekeeper first won. He said the facility had an official challenge contract at the front desk that could be reprinted with agreed terms. The cafeteria fell silent, as most were new exterminators unfamiliar with the concept. Fu wiped blood from his lip, looked at the young man and then at Hyde, and agreed to the challenge, stating that if he won, Hyde would be his slave for life with no exceptions. Hyde countered that if he won, Fu and his entire party would be his slaves for life. Fu's female companion urged him quietly, but he shook her off and confirmed the agreement. The contract took 4 minutes at the front desk, with both parties signing. The young man from the far table observed silently, suggesting prior experience. The clerk entered both entries without comment. Afterward, Hyde was shown to the one-star gate he had chosen and noticed a screen displaying rankings. Toma appeared at Hyde's shoulder, nervous and pale. He warned Hyde that Fu had a party of 4 while Hyde was alone, and it was impossible to win. He asked if Hyde was going in without a weapon, to which Hyde confirmed yes. Across the floor, Fu and his party prepared at Zone 4's entry platform without looking back. Hyde asked about the display, and Toma explained it showed the record time to clear the gate, held by Prodigy James Collar at 7 minutes and 3 seconds. Hyde interrupted to ask about the interior size. Toma said it was roughly equivalent to 2 city blocks in real space and that most first-timers took 1 to 2 hours. Hyde examined the gate up close through thick glass in Zone 2. The loop gate appeared as a vertical tear in the air about 2 meters tall, with edges curling inward as if trying to close. The entry platform hummed underfoot as the gate opened, allowing Hyde and Toma to enter. They stopped in front of the gate. Toma wished Hyde to return in one piece and maybe with a better time than the record holder. Toma leaned toward the gate's interior monitoring display, squinting. Hyde stepped inside and vanished. Toma's leg hit an irregular surface. He had half a second to say, "Oh no," before the gate's current pulled him through behind Hyde. On the other side, Hyde was hit by the heavy air carrying a thick green smell like forest and rot, with dim, directionless light and a dense canopy of twisted dark branches overhead. The ground was uneven with exposed roots thick as forearms and others just wide enough to trip on. Behind him, the gate rippled shut. The exit would reappear only after the gatekeeper was dead. Hyde stood still for 3 seconds and listened. Then he heard Toma hit the ground face first into the root-covered soil, without his clipboard and with his helper lanyard flipped. Toma lay still briefly, then lifted his head and quietly confirmed he was inside the gate. Hyde blinked. Toma said he was inside the gate with no weapon and predicted he would be in trouble and lose his helper license after only 11 days. Something moved in the undergrowth to the left. Toma whispered a question about what it was. Hyde told him to get behind him and stay there. Toma stood up and quietly followed behind Hyde. The undergrowth to the left shook once, hard, like something had launched off the ground. Hyde stepped forward and to the right, putting the large root cluster between Toma and whatever was coming. A Calamity Beast burst from the gap between two tree trunks at ground level. Hyde caught it with both forearms crossed in front of his chest as the scales grew to cover his skin, absorbing the impact and directing it sideways. The hooks on the beast's splayed fingers bit into the scales but did not penetrate. The beast's mouth opened and sprayed yellow-green venom at Hyde's forearms. The scales thickened automatically where the venom made contact, sizzling as the chemical hit. Hyde slammed the beast against a tree, crushing it into a paste within seconds. Hyde looked down to see the scales dissolving where the venom spread, losing cohesion and pulling away like wet paper. A palm-sized patch on his left forearm was gone. The system detected organic venom with unknown subtype from a G-rank Calamity Beast and queried to initiate an adaptation sequence. Hyde commanded the system to evolve, and the adaptation began rapidly. Toma asked what was happening, and Hyde replied it was nothing of concern. Toma explained the beast was a Quig, a G-rank beast that hunted in groups using venom delivered through hooked fingers. Hyde turned to see Toma standing straight, no longer pressed behind the root cluster. Toma pulled an exterminator ring from his uniform pocket and slid it onto his right hand, activating it with a faint blue flicker. Hyde asked if Toma was more than a helper, and Toma confirmed he was also an exterminator tamer class with a 2-star talent. He explained his background in accounting at Pharaoh Extermination Agency and that helper pay was better. Toma noted 2 more Quigs were nearby, having heard the kill. When Hyde asked how he knew, Toma summoned a purple bat Shikigami with a glow of white light, explaining it was connected to him and enhanced his hearing. The undergrowth moved from 2 directions simultaneously, one to the left and one circling wide to the right. In a deliberate arc, Hyde asked if the Shikigami could act in the enclosed space, and Toma said she hated enclosed spaces but would be on standby. Hyde yelled left and turned to face the approaching beast, summoning the beginner's sword from his inventory. Hyde turned left as the second Quig emerged from the undergrowth low and fast, aiming at his legs. He stepped into the attack, dropped his weight, and drove his knee into the underside of the beast as it lunged upward. The impact redirected the Quig off angle, and Hyde grabbed one of its rear limbs midair. The beast twisted immediately, cycling its remaining limbs and preparing to spray venom from its projecting mouth. Hyde kept the spray pointed away from his body, rotated his grip, and swung the sword, piercing the Quig's belly. He released it, and the beast fell to the ground, stunned but still alive, venom dripping from its mouth onto the soil. Hyde stamped on it twice, turning it into a mess. He checked his arms and noticed the dissolved patch on his left forearm had spread slightly, while a second patch near his right wrist had thinned. He asked where the third Quig was, and Toma indicated it was on the right side, waiting without moving since the second kill. Hyde turned right, looked into the undergrowth, then moved toward the thick bushes to catch the beast. Toma asked what Hyde was doing and where he had summoned the sword from, suggesting it might be a spatial storage device worth reporting, but Hyde ignored the questions and held the sword tightly. The light between the bushes and lower trunks gave flat, even illumination. Hyde recalled the beast's predictable movements. The first 2 tried to latch onto skin to ensure their attacks landed. He decided to bait the third Quig by offering his left forearm with the dissolved patch facing the direction of the waiting beast. The undergrowth exploded as the third Quig came faster than the others, locking onto Hyde's left forearm. Hyde turned into the attack deliberately half a beat slow, letting the hooks catch the bare patch. The beast bit within a second, injecting venom at point-blank range. The venom burned deeply through Hyde's skin and tissue, pulsing with his heartbeat toward his elbow. His left hand grew heavy, and signals to his fingers delayed. He swung the sword and slashed the beast in 2. He stood upright as yellow discoloration spread from the entry point along his veins, followed by nausea. A system window appeared, indicating extreme severity and a change in damage type, followed by an adaptation sequence progressing from 0% to 20%. Hyde acknowledged that the new skill would be better and faster, despite feeling nauseous. Toma reached Hyde and looked at the injury with worry, trembling as he said the venom had reached Hyde's skin and bloodstream, risking paralysis or death even from a G-rank beast. Hyde reassured Toma that he would be all right and would heal soon. Toma asked if Hyde's class was related to healing, and Hyde confirmed it was. A vicious growl startled them, followed by the noise of many footsteps like a stampede. Toma closed his eyes and sent his Shikigami bat above. His face turned ashen, and he urged Hyde to run immediately. Hyde, confused but sensing danger, followed. The system screen appeared, showing the adaptation was complete. Hyde examined the screen and saw the adaptation was complete, showing the Abyssal Scale Carapace had leveled up from level 1 to level 2 with increased structural density, improved chemical resistance, reduced vulnerability to dissolving by 80%, faster coverage reformation speed, and physical capabilities enhanced from 50% to 100%. A new passive counter skill, Toxin Resistance Rank C, granted full immunity to G and F rank organic venoms and toxins, partial resistance to E rank toxins, and active neutralization of toxins in the bloodstream. The burning in his forearm stopped, the yellow glow receded, and his nausea lifted. He closed the screen, satisfied with the new skill skill. They ran through the forest where the sound of a stampede grew louder, the root floor vibrating beneath them. Toma ran beside Hyde, holding his helper lanyard flat against his chest to prevent it from catching on branches, while his Shikigami bat circled above the canopy. Hyde asked what was behind them. Toma, sweating and pale, said it was an E-rank Calamity Beast, which was impossible for a 1-star loot gate because the gatekeeper should be F-rank. Toma explained that they were in the hunting grounds of the E-rank beast, and the smaller beasts were fleeing from it. He added that gates could advance in rank if they accumulated enough mana, but it rarely happened mid-cycle and usually came with warnings, which they had not received, meaning the gate reclassified just before they entered. The bat circled sharply ahead, and Toma stopped Hyde with a forearm to the chest. They halted while Toma closed his eyes, then opened them and warned of danger straight ahead, instructing Hyde not to move. Hyde nodded but cautiously stepped forward through roots and low brush, spotting a solid mass of wet bar quigs covering the ground 30 meters ahead, forming a dense colony that made the earlier 3 quigs seem like a greeting. Toma said they should move immediately, and Hyde nodded, turning right behind Toma to avoid the colony. The new path was worse, with denser roots, tighter gaps between trunks, and a lower canopy that forced them to duck. Toma led, and Hyde followed, the bat flying ahead at knee height, navigating the root maze silently. After about 40 meters, Toma suddenly bent forward, pressing his hands against his stomach and vomiting blood onto the root floor. Hyde crouched beside him and asked what happened. Toma wiped his mouth and said his bat, Yura, had gone ahead to scout but was attacked. He ended the summoning before she died to avoid backlash, and though he was lucky to have only internal bruising, a pack of 10 F-rank flying blood feeders awaited ahead. They hunted by body heat in formation and could strip prey if they gained open space above it. Hyde looked up through a canopy gap and saw shadows with membranous wings passing by. He told Toma to stay behind the thickest trunk and call out if anything approached that wasn't him. Toma opened his mouth to speak, but Hyde was already running toward open ground. Toma began to say he could still fight, but Hyde interrupted him without turning back, stating that Toma's bat was down and he was bleeding internally, ordering him to stay put. Toma looked at Hyde briefly, then moved to the nearest root and wild grass cluster, pressing himself into a dense hollow of overlapping trunks with one hand flat on his chest. Hyde stepped into the open area visible through a break in the canopy where 2 large trunks had grown apart, revealing a clear window of open air above the forest floor. He pulled off his shirt and pants, dropped them at the canopy line, and let his scales come up over his body, spreading from chest to jaw. The scales locked tightly and enhanced his limbs physically. He raised his sword and aimed it at the flying beasts, cursing them to die. The formation of 10 beasts above him broke as they dropped straight down. Hyde stepped hard left, causing the first 4 to miss him. He slashed horizontally through the nearest one's thorax and abdomen, killing it. 2 beasts came from either side. He ducked under the left one and drove his sword upward through its underbelly, then grabbed the right one by its wings after its proboscis struck his scaled neck and broke, crushing it in his fist. The remaining 7 spread wide and hovered, but Hyde crossed the gap in 3 strides and attacked the left flank where 3 clustered near the canopy edge. He cut down the first beast cleanly, took a hit on his forearm from the second but tore apart its compound eye with his fingers, and followed the third into the canopy shadow to kill it before it. Suddenly the earth shuddered, nearly knocking Hyde down, and the remaining beasts fled. Hyde rested his sword at his side, noting he had killed 6 F-rank beasts without strain. The ground moved again with heavy steps coming from the direction where the trees shifted at their bases. The footsteps stopped. Toma stood up and walked beside Hyde, his face pale with terror. The ambient sounds ceased. From the dark between the trunks, 2 pale eyes opened and looked at Hyde. Toma exhaled sharply and identified the creature as the gatekeeper. Hyde and Toma remained still as the gatekeeper regarded Hyde with its 2 large, pale eyes set in a head wider than. The neck, thick as a tree trunk and covered in overlapping dark gray plates, connected the head to a massive shell the size of a truck, made of dense, interlocking plates resembling petrified bark covered in shallow moss. Tentacles rose from the base of the shell, more than a dozen, thick at the root and tapering to rounded tips, moving independently across the ground, curling around tree trunks and dragging along the root floor. The gatekeeper exhaled, shifting the moss on its shell. Toma told Hyde quietly to go back to the forest and hide, warning that the creature was an E-rank. Hyde acknowledged this and encouraged Toma to leave. Toma stepped back into the undergrowth, leaving Hyde alone in the clearing with the gatekeeper. Hyde gripped his sword. The gatekeeper struck first by snapping 3 tentacles upright on its right flank and driving them at Hyde like. Hyde threw himself left, dodging 2 tentacles, but the third glancingly struck his right ribs, lifting him off the ground and throwing him sideways onto the root floor. He rolled and rose to one knee. Hyde's system activated Abyssal Scale Carapace, absorbing 9% damage and suppressing pain by 50%. Adaptive Override began analyzing the blunt force from the wooden tentacle, identifying the source as the E-rank Roots Hell Gatekeeper and initiating an adaptation adaptation sequence. Hyde smiled at the system screen, noting his scales held and bones remained intact. He stood and glared at the beast, commanding evolution. The adaptation progressed from 1% to 10%. Hyde ran forward, closing the distance quickly, and drove his sword into the base of the nearest tentacle with full force. The blade penetrated 2/3 of the tentacle's dense, fibrous wood before stopping. The tentacle attempted to retreat, but Hyde dug his talon-like fingers into it and ripped it. The severed tentacle hit the ground, twitching, oozing dark blood. The gatekeeper roared, thrashing 2 tentacles wildly. Hyde blocked with his sword, which broke into 2 pieces after 2 strikes. He abandoned the sword, relying solely on his 100% physical enhancement. As a tentacle approached, Hyde grabbed it and pulled with full strength against the gatekeeper's resistance. The tentacle stretched taut, the gatekeeper's body shifting an inch toward him. The tentacle tore at the root with a sound like green wood splitting, and the recoil sent Hyde stumbling back 2 steps, tentacle in hand. He dropped it and seized another. The gatekeeper shrieked and attacked again. Hyde ripped 6 tentacles within a minute but was caught in the knee by one and lost his balance. Simultaneously, a sharper tentacle tore through the scales on Hyde's right abdomen, passing through and causing red blood to gush from the wound. Hyde ripped the tentacle out, biting down on the pain and standing again. The system analysis completed and displayed before Hyde. A dangerous grin spread across his face as he realized the gatekeeper was in serious trouble. The system displayed the completion of the adaptive override and the generation of a counter skill named Abyssal Flame, rank B, active, which allowed the user to. Hyde noted the skill's properties and recognized its similarity to mage class abilities, contrasting with his own Abyssal Scale Carapace, which resembled that of a warrior class. Hyde winced as pain from his abdomen surged but noticed the wound was already healing, faster than any injury he had experienced before. He dismissed the system window, ducked left, and dodged a tentacle that changed trajectory mid-motion. Hyde jumped back but saw another tentacle coming from behind. Unable to dodge, he braced for impact. The tentacle struck iron and veered away, passing close to Hyde. He looked back to see Toma holding a half-broken sword and smiling foolishly. Toma admitted he was not much of a fighter but could help Hyde see. Hyde thanked him and focused on the returning tentacle. Hyde activated the new skill, and flame emerged silently from his palm, curling orange-blue and spreading over his. He willed the flame to form a circle above his palm and raised both hands, spreading the flame to his left palm as he faced the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper had shifted slightly during Hyde's focus on the tentacles and new skill. Toma was shocked and confused by the flames, but before he could ask, Hyde laughed and addressed the gatekeeper, noting its shell and tentacles were made of wood. The beast attacked in response. 3 tentacles came from the right and 2 from the left, converging on Hyde. He did not move or try to rip through them, but gripped the nearest tentacle with both burning hands. The flame ignited the fibrous wood flesh, spreading rapidly in both directions along the tentacle, which caught fire entirely within seconds. The gatekeeper screamed, and Hyde's grin widened. The beast tore the burning tentacle back, but Hyde reached for another, grabbed it with both hands, and pulled himself along it toward the gatekeeper's body as the flame spread. Another tentacle struck his back, and another wrapped around his left arm. The flame ran down his arm into the coil, causing the tentacle to release immediately and retract in a burning spiral. Hyde reached the base of the shell, where the petrified bark rose like a cliff face with deep grooves and knots. 2 tentacles struck from above, aiming to pin him against the shell, but Hyde moved into the shell's shadow, pressed his palms flat against its base, and pushed the flame outward. The moss burned first, followed by the bark, which blackened and split as the heat penetrated the grain. The gatekeeper thrashed, screamed, and tried to turn away as the shell burned in a wide arc from base to mid-curve, and most tentacles were gone. Hyde saw the beast's exposed neck connecting its head to the shell, jumped, reached the head, and drove his right fist into the eye socket. The eye surface ruptured, and the pale luminosity extinguished as his fist penetrated into the skull, the flame spreading from his knuckles into the tissue. He drove his left fist in after it, both hands inside the skull, flames spreading. The flame climbed into the neck and toward the body beneath the shell, burning the gatekeeper from the inside while the shell burned outside. The screaming stopped. The gatekeeper's body shuddered in a full-body convulsion that shook the ground. Its legs gave way, and the burning corpse fell. Hyde pulled his hands free and stepped back. The system notified the elimination of the Calamity Beast, Roots Hell Gatekeeper, and awarded 1,200 experience points. Hyde leveled up twice, from level 2 to 4, and received level-up rewards added to his inventory. The flames consumed the beast's body, leaving only a dark brown ball-like structure at the center. The gatekeeper's body burned, leaving a dark brown sphere, smooth and dense, about the size of a fist, resting in the ruin of its chest cavity. Hyde crouched and picked it up. The sphere was heavier than it appeared and warm in his palm. As he considered storing it in his inventory without further inspection, the ball vanished without a trace. Green energy fumes rose from the beast's death spot and swirled around Hyde's Hyde's body before seeping in. This was the accumulated life mana of an E-rank beast that had existed at the center of the loop. Life mana functioned like experience that beasts and humans accumulated to grow stronger. After a kill, life mana escaped the defeated's body and entered the victor's. Accumulating life mana helped elevate class rank, increasing class evolution percentage from 0 to 100%. Hyde activated his class state, and the ring in his hand projected his stats. His name was Hyde Voltier, class Infinity, current class rank F, class evolution percentage 0%, class potential S, talent none, talent rank 0 star. He frowned, noticing no change. A system window appeared, explaining that the life mana had been converted to evolution points usable in the shop. Toma stared at Hyde with his mouth open, having watched since the flames appeared on Hyde's hands. He finally spoke, commenting on Hyde's class, noting the scales as a warrior class talent for physical enhancement and the flames as a mage class talent. He expressed confusion over Hyde displaying both simultaneously. Hyde said nothing and changed into his clothes behind the bushes. Toma pressed on, stating classes did not work that way. Warriors could not generate elemental flames, mages could not grow scales, and asked what Hyde was. Hyde explained that his class allowed affinity to all other classes and access to some talents he had been in contact with. Toma struggled to comprehend the implications of a class without framework restrictions and access to any talent type. Hyde interrupted, warning Toma that what he saw at the gate was incomplete and asked him not to tell anyone. Toma nodded, keeping the secret. The gate exit opened, and they stepped into the real world where cold air hit them sharply, contrasting the gate's dry heat. Cameras scanned them and announced Zone 2 runners exited. Alarms began, the facility's orange alert activated, and an overhead announcement ordered all non-essential personnel to evacuate Zone 2 immediately due to spontaneous rank advancement to a 2-star loop gate. Exterminators and staff moved efficiently, executing emergency protocols. The monitoring team pulled up new interior readings showing elevated mana density. Toma observed silently. The record board above the gate zones updated, drawing everyone's attention. The board displayed a new record for Zone 2, Hyde Voltier at 5 minutes 48 seconds, beating the previous record of James Collar at 7 minutes 3 seconds. The facility fell silent, broken by a loud metallic clatter. The record had stood for almost a decade, now broken by an exterminator with no talent. A facility manager approached Hyde, a man in his mid-40s dealing with multiple unusual events. He offered to show Hyde to a restroom while processing the zone advancement and post-run evaluation, including medical checks. Hyde agreed without fully listening. The manager turned to Toma, requesting a full incident report at the head office immediately. Toma straightened, nodded, and said he would make the report now.